Monday of the 5th week of Lent.
A reading from the book of the prophet Daniel. In Babylon there lived a man named Joachim, who married a very beautiful and God-fearing woman, Susanna, the daughter of Hilkiah. Her pious parents had trained their daughter according to the law of Moses. Joachim was very rich. He had a garden near his house, and the Jews had recourse to him often because he was the most respected of them all. That year, 2 elders of the people were appointed judges, of whom the Lord said, "Wickedness has come out of Babylon, from the elders who were to govern the people as judges." These men, to whom all brought their cases, frequented the house of Joachim. When the people left at noon, Susanna used to enter her husband's garden for a walk. When the old men saw her enter every day for her walk, they began to lust for her. They suppressed their consciences. They would not allow their eyes to look to heaven, and did not keep in mind just judgments. One day, while they were waiting for the right moment, she entered the garden as usual, with 2 maids only. She decided to bathe, for the weather was warm. Nobody else was there except the 2 elders, who had hidden themselves and were watching her. "Bring me oil and soap," she said to the maids, "and shut the garden doors while I bathe." As soon as the maids had left, the 2 old men got up and hurried to her. "Look," they said, "the garden doors are shut and no one can see us. Give in to our desire and lie with us. If you refuse, we will testify against you that you dismissed your maids because a young man was here with you." "I am completely trapped," Susanna groaned. "If I yield, it will be my death. If I refuse, I cannot escape your power. Yet it is better for me to fall into your power without guilt than to sin before the Lord." Then Susanna shrieked, and the old men also shouted at her, as one of them ran to open the garden doors. When the people in the house heard the cries from the garden, they rushed in by the side gate to see what had happened to her. At the accusations by the old men, the servants felt very much ashamed, for never had any such thing been said about Susanna. When the people came to her husband Joachim the next day, the 2 wicked elders also came, fully determined to put Susanna to death. Before all the people they ordered, "Send for Susanna, the daughter of Hilkiah, the wife of Joachim." When she was sent for, she came with her parents, children, and all her relatives. All her relatives and the onlookers were weeping. In the midst of the people, the 2 elders rose up and laid their hands on her head. Through tears she looked up to heaven, for she trusted in the Lord wholeheartedly. The elders made this accusation: "As we were walking in the garden alone, this woman entered with 2 girls and shut the doors of the garden, dismissing the girls. A young man who was hidden there came and lay with her. When we, in a corner of the garden, saw this crime, we ran toward them. We saw them lying together, but the man we could not hold, because he was stronger than we. He opened the doors and ran off. Then we seized her and asked who the young man was, but she refused to tell us. We testified to this." The assembly believed them, since they were elders and judges of the people, and they condemned her to death. But Susanna cried aloud, "O eternal God, you know what is hidden and are aware of all things before they come to be. You know that they have testified falsely against me. Here I am about to die, though I have done none of the things with which these wicked men have charged me." The Lord heard her prayer. As she was being led to execution, God stirred up the Holy Spirit of a young boy named Daniel, and he cried aloud, "I will have no part in the death of this woman." All the people turned and asked him, "What is this you are saying?" He stood in their midst and continued, "Are you such fools, O children of Israel, to condemn a woman of Israel without examination and without clear evidence? Return to court, for they have testified falsely against her." Then all the people returned in haste. To Daniel the elders said, "Come, sit with us and inform us, since God has given you the prestige of old age. But he replied, "Separate these two far from each other, that I may examine them." After they were separated one from the other, he called one of them and said, "How you have grown evil with age! Now have your past sins come to term, passing unjust sentences, condemning the innocent, and freeing the guilty, although the Lord says, 'The innocent and the just you shall not put to death.' Now then, if you were a witness, tell me under what tree you saw them together." "Under a mastic tree," he answered. Daniel replied, "Your fine lie has cost you your head, for the angel of God shall receive the sentence from him and split you in two." Putting him to one side, he ordered the other one to be brought. Daniel said to him, "Offspring of Canaan, not of Judah, beauty has seduced you. Lust has subverted your conscience. This is how you acted with the daughters of Israel, and in their fear they yielded to you. But a daughter of Judah did not tolerate your wickedness. Now then, tell me under what tree you surprised them together." "Under an oak," he said. Daniel replied, "Your fine lie has cost you also your head, for the angel of God waits with a sword to cut you in two, so as to make an end of you both." The whole assembly cried aloud, blessing God who saves those who hope in him. They rose up against the two elders, for by their own words Daniel had convicted them of perjury. According to the law of Moses, they inflicted on them the penalty they had plotted to impose on their neighbor. They put them to death. Thus was innocent blood spared that day. The word of the Lord.
The responsorial psalm. The response is, "Even though I walk in the dark valley, I fear no evil, for you are at my side. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. In verdant pastures he gives me repose. Beside restful waters he leads me. He refreshes my soul. Even though I walk in the dark valley, I fear no evil, for you are at my side. He guides me in right paths for his name's sake. Even though I walk in the dark valley, I fear no evil, for you are at my side with your rod and your staff that give me courage. Even though I walk in the dark valley, I fear no evil, for you are at my side. You spread the table before me in the sight of my foes. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Even though I walk in the dark valley, I fear no evil, for you are at my side. Only goodness and kindness follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord for years to come. Even though I walk in the dark valley, I fear no evil, for you are at my side.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. Jesus went to the Mount of Olives, but early in the morning he arrived again in the temple area, and all the people started coming to him, and he sat down and taught them. Then the scribes and the Pharisees brought a woman who had been caught in adultery, and made her stand in the middle. They said to him, "Teacher, this woman was caught in the very act of committing adultery. Now, in the law, Moses commanded us to stone such women. So, what do you say?" They said this to test him, so that they could have some charge to bring against him. Jesus bent down and began to write on the ground with his finger. But when they continued asking him, he straightened up and said to them, "Let the one among you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her." Again, he bent down and wrote on the ground. And in response, they went away, one by one, beginning with the elders. So he was left alone with the woman before him. Then Jesus straightened up and said to her, "Woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you?" She replied, "No one, sir." Then Jesus said, "Neither do I condemn you. Go, and from now on, do not sin anymore." The Gospel of the Lord.
Monday of the fifth week of Lent. The first reading comes from Daniel 13, 1-9, 15 to 17, 19 to 30, and 33 to 62. This rather long story speaks about a woman named Susanna, who's a woman of great virtue. Two of the elders of Israel try to seduce her, and when she refuses to give in to their evil plots, they accuse her of having committed adultery. There's a young man named Daniel who is able to defend her. Now this is very odd because the elders are considered to be the ones who have wisdom in Israel. Daniel is a young man, and nevertheless, Daniel is able to prove that the elders are lying. He asked them, "Under which tree did you see Susanna lying with her lover?" One says under a mastic tree, the other says under an oak tree. Because they don't tell the same story, he's able to prove that they're lying about what they said they saw. They are condemned to receive the punishment that Susanna would have received, while Daniel is able to free this innocent woman, this virtuous woman of Israel. Now the story of Susanna is found in Daniel 13. Daniel 13 and 14 are two chapters that don't appear in the Jewish or the Protestant Bible because they were originally written in Greek. They were never written in Hebrew, and therefore they appear in the Orthodox and the Catholic Bible, which accepts those books as canonical. The Gospel is from John 8, 1 to 11. This is the passage that speaks about the woman caught in adultery. The scribes and the Pharisees simply use her as a test case to be able to get something to charge Jesus with. It's not that they really want justice, it's they want revenge. They want to humiliate Jesus, because if Jesus decides to have her punished, then he'll look like the bad man. If he decides to let her go, then he's not keeping the law. Either way, the scribes and Pharisees think they have something over on Jesus. Well, Jesus doesn't play their game. He refuses to accuse the woman, looks up and says, "Whoever is without sin cast the first stone." So he puts it back on them. They have to decide to do this. And when they slowly realize that they too are sinners, they sneak away because they no longer have a standing in order to condemn this woman. Jesus looks up and says, "Has no one condemned you?" She says, "No, sir." He says, "Neither do I. Go and sin no more." So he shows her mercy rather than demanding strict justice. Now there is one difficulty with this particular passage. It doesn't seem to belong in John's Gospel. If you look at some of the most important ancient manuscripts, this story is not found. It was only added later on, it seems. And furthermore, it doesn't have a very Johannine character. For example, we hear that Jesus taught, but it doesn't give us any of the teaching. And in John's Gospel, whenever Jesus opens his mind, he talks at least 20 or 30 verses. Furthermore, in John's Gospel, there's really only one commandment, not to believe that Jesus is the Son of God. Here, we're dealing with another commandment, adultery. So, it seems as if this passage was probably added at a later point. Saying that, it doesn't mean that this is not a true event. What most probably happened is that a scribe was copying the Gospel of John, found this story, realized it was a true story, and incorporated it into John. If it really belongs in any Gospel, it would probably belong in Luke more than John, because it speaks about a woman, it raises her dignity, and it speaks about the forgiveness of sins, which are common themes in the Gospel of Luke. Now we have it in John, and we have no doubts that it's an authentic story. It fits the character of Jesus. It's just that it's a little bit out of place. And in fact, if you were to take the material immediately preceding the story and immediately following, take out the story, the two sides would fit together perfectly. What do we take away from this story? The idea of forgiveness, the idea that Jesus has come not to condemn us, but to let us experience the overwhelming love of the Father. And may God bless us.